Very good evening to everybody and welcome to this next in our Music Revival online live stream series. This is Christopher Digan coming to you from our home in KwaZulu-Natal on Saturday the 11th of February for our in-concert session. And this evening's program, I'm hoping you're going to enjoy the selection of music by Mozart, by Schubert, Jacques, Duphly and Chopin, a large chunk of Mozart, and all these pieces are bound together by the use of the same key, which is a key of C minor. I'll come back to that in a minute. But if you are watching, of course, once again, I am relying on generous donations, spontaneous donations from the viewers. If you are enjoying these programs, I am still carrying on with these programs. I have decided to keep them free. And if you are watching, if you are able to support me, I'm always very grateful for any support that does come through, whether it's a regular support or whether it's just once off occasionally when you feel in the mood, if you feel you've enjoyed it and you would like to contribute something to the program. So the in-concert session is a little bit more of a classical selection, and it's a bit of a moody day today, and I've decided to play a piece that I've actually never played for you before. It's a rather substantial work by Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. It's his Sonata in C minor. It's a rather dramatic piece full of gravity. And not only the sonata, Mozart rather interestingly wrote a fantasy, a very substantial fantasy, which I think, from what I understand, he intended the pieces to be published together and to be played together if possible. So it's a considerable chunk of music that passes through many, many moods. So first of all, the sonata itself, a sonata, very highly structured work in 3 movements, a standard structure of a very fast, outgoing, productive and full of energy first movement. The second movement very reflective and very much gentler, very slow, adagio, adagio meaning slow, and a very gentle but with a fair amount of substance and drama in it as well. And then the last movement, this very fast movement with a presto, a feeling of a breathlessness. There's a feeling of breathlessness throughout the music, as well as some very pregnant pauses. The music stops regularly. It's a very somewhat disjointed piece of music in some ways, but you'll see how the 3 movements add up together. And on top of that, Mozart puts another 10-minute fantasy in front of it. So as opposed to the very organized structure, fast, slow, fast in the sonata, where each movement has a continual pulse or a tempo or a speed, that whole movement, first movement is fast, the whole second movement is slow. The fantasy is very different, as opposed to this organized, structured and highly organized structured environment of the sonata. The fantasy is more about a freedom of imagination. This is what a fantasy is about. It's about a spontaneous shifting from one idea to another that don't necessarily link. There's no necessary link or logical connection between the two often. It's really a freedom, a flight of fancy, a fantasy itself. And so Mozart brings together a number of disparate ideas, some fast, some tormented, some reflected, some static, some moody, and really strings them together through very rapid changes. It's a rather perplexing and very dramatic piece. The whole sonata and fantasy is a lot of drama. So the key which binds the whole program tonight is the key of C minor. And when we talk about a key, it's really, again, just this, that there are basically 12 keys in our Western music, majors and minors, one built around each note. So C minor means that it's as opposed to C major. Major keys we generally associate with happiness and joy. Minor keys we generally associate with a sort of drama and sadness. Now, this idea of one key having a greater or a different color or a different temperament in our modern tuning system shouldn't really make a difference, but in fact it does. So in Beethoven terms as well, C minor is a key that composers generally reserve a certain drama and darkness to. Major compositions that Beethoven wrote in C minor, the great Symphony No. 5 is in C minor of Beethoven, the Piano Concerto No. 3. A very dramatic key, even for Bach. Pierre-Elias. So Mozart wrote now the Piano Concerto in C minor. This is the only sonata in C minor that he wrote. It's a key that somehow composers reserve for music that is very dramatic, quite searching. There's a certain weight, a certain gravitas, you might say, to anything that's written in C minor. So this is then going to crop up again in the music of Schubert, Duphly, and Chopin, which I end the program with. But I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. So this is the Fantasy K475, K again being the catalogue number, Mr. Köchel, who catalogued Mozart's work, and the Sonata K457. The numbers have hardly switched around, but that's the order in which Mozart wrote them. The Fantasy in C minor, followed by the 3 movements of the Sonata in C minor by Mozart. This is our main work for this evening's in-concert session. Mozart in his most dramatic form there in terms of his solo piano music, some very dark, dramatic texts. It was such imagination, such a variety of imagination, of freedom, of fantasy in that first fantasy piece, and then the three movements of the sonata in C minor K4, 5/7 by Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. That was our two major works there. But really, it's a wonderful composition, and it really has such cohesion, actually, despite all those so many varied forms and so many varied ideas. There does seem to be a certain logic which ties all of that together, always, as in Mozart's music, which makes it so magical and so wonderful. And of course, someone who is so magical and wonderful is Wendy. Now, you're not supposed to be coming up in the live streams during the classical piano hour, I know, but it's such, you so enjoyed that music. You found the dramatic in Mozart to be quite enticing, didn't you? Yes, Wendy Pop. Wendy Pop's enjoying it. And let's see, little Lucy's going to come up for a little. Lucy's also going to, yes, little Lucy also wants to have a little mention. Little Wendy the dramatic. Wendy the dramatic and Lucy, the little Lucy. Lucy Boosie. There we go. Lucy, how's things? They're all fine. Yes, you also like that. Well, thanks, girls. Back in your little baskets there. So I'm going to continue, as I said, with this key of C minor for another series, another selection of compositions. Moving on to music by Schubert, more drama in the first of the Impromptus, Opus 90. This is from the first set of Impromptus. Schubert wrote 4 Impromptus, and then later on in his life another 4. This is the opening Impromptu from the first set, and it's a very dramatic opening. It opens with this in the key of C. So there's a sort of real sense of suspension with a very dramatic, very ethereal, just one little line on its own, one little melody line by itself. The piece has somewhat, through much of it, a feeling of almost a funeral march, a very sustained, very dark march, dotted rhythm, which is quite unique, but it passes through so many contrasting atmospheres as well. It's very, I think, a very magical piece. Straight after that, I go back to the 17th century French repertoire with Jacques Duphly, a piece of music that I discovered last year, La Pothoüin, very haunting refrain, some very beautiful textures in this piece as well. And then I end off this evening session, concert session, with the Nocturne in C minor by Frédéric Chopin. Again, a piece of great drama. Chopin unwields this very, almost again, funeral march atmosphere in the music, very steady, very haunting pace, a very gentle hymn in the middle section, and then the opening melody returns, but this time, instead of the very gentle march rhythm, it's very agitated, and there's a lot of turbulence in the accompaniment before it resounds and disappears back into the quietness. So this is a Schubert Impromptu, Jacques Duphly's La Pothoüin, and Chopin the Nocturne in C minor, opus 48. great deal of drama packed into that last 3 minutes or so, 4 minutes of a Chopin Nocturne in C minor, opus 48. Before that, Jacques Duphly's La Pothoüin, 18th century French composer, and starting off that selection with a very dramatic impromptu, a very extended 10-minute impromptu from Franz Schubert. And that brings an end to this evening's in-concert session, which started with Mozart's Fantasy and Sonata, also in C minor, a C minor selection. I was thinking, well, this might be too much of the same mood, but in fact, each of these pieces explores the areas of the drama around the key so exclusively and so fantastically, and with such imagination. I think it provides a great contrast. Lucy's having a good stretch in appreciation. Yes, a downward dog. That's correct, Luce. Well done. So that does bring an end to this evening's session. Looking forward to seeing you on the next, not this coming Wednesday, but the next Wednesday for another piano hour session. I'm hoping to have a selection of my own compositions. We haven't had that for a while. A number of people have been asking about that whole program of my own pieces, including some new ones, I hope, which I've been working on. And once again, if you're able to support me, if you'd like to donate something towards these costs and the program, if you're enjoying the program, and I'm very grateful if you do actually contribute either for each one or for the occasional donation, it's hugely appreciated. You'll find all the details at my website, musicrevival.co.za. And of course, you can watch all of these streams and all the previous streams at my YouTube channel. If you go into YouTube and search for my name, you will find all 248. Also, almost 248. The first few are not there, but this is number 248. We're coming up for a 250 milestone, so we'll have to have something special for that. Thanks for joining me tonight. Thank you for Leon. Thanks to Leon on the controls for this evening. Great to have you again. Thanks to Lucy for behaving and not barking, and look forward to seeing you in 10 days' time for our next piano hour session.